Accessing data XEUI. Establishment. Connected. Imperial Archives. Declassified Archives 0701. Status. Open access. Welcome, Inquisitor.
Within dark and forgotten places hide the enemies of the Empire. You have been chosen to enter such places and, protected by the best armor detectors Mechanicus can provide, cleanse it.
The Great Crusade was the fastest mobilization of resources the galaxy had ever seen. In little more than 2 standard centuries, the Imperium had spread far away from Terra and its domains to claim sovereignty from the hollow stars to the massive extensions of the galaxy's eastern fringe. As the Imperium embraced its manifest destiny as heir of the galaxy, the reclamation of the old colonies and its untold billions of souls progressed steadily faster, farther and farther away from Terra. This acceleration rate will eventually begin to impact on the logistics of the Great Crusade, stretching the supply lines of the vanguard elements of the Crusade, the Space Marine Legions. Furthermore, the vanguard position of the Legions meant high levels of attrition both in materials and Astartes personnel, due to the distance of the Legions from their respective recruitment homeworlds. The Adeptus Astartes was, and still is, a costly investment by the Imperium. It must be understood that even at an industrialized rate of production of Adeptus Astartes, a high casualty count of his finest will eventually lead to the cease of operations of entire legions, delaying the reconquest of mankind's lost worlds and halting the continued growth rate of a young Imperium. Due to the cost both in time and resources of the implementation of infrastructure in the farthest conquered fringes of the galaxy, it was deemed necessary to restrain the losses of Space Marines in the front due to war action. The answer to this problem was formulated by the Mechanicum in the shape of the Terminator Armour. The first attempt of manufacturing a heavier personal protection suit appeared during the long and difficult conquest of the lost colonies in the galactic core, to the south of the Maelstrom. The conquest of the inner core was noteworthy for its battlefields in close confines with little to no cover, such as mining complexes and spacecraft boarding actions. These battlegrounds made evident the necessity of a heavy armor suit, the Mark III, Armorum Ferrum. The Armorum Ferrum, or Iron Armor in Low Gothic, displayed a redistribution of the armored layers, emphasizing the frontal frame by incorporating more ablative layers, while reducing the bulk in the back. The attachment of these layers was also carefully set, lessening the rivets in the frontal section, resulting in a much smoother and slot frame, easily deflecting shots. The suit also featured an angular redesign of the helmet, featuring additional faceplates that ended in a wedge shape for added deflective capability, giving a sheer visual brutality. Although it offered even greater protection, the Mark III was a mere heavy power armor. The redistribution and added layers of armor increased the sustained weight by the joints, causing clanks and grinds with the slightest movement, being ill-suited for stealth operations. This also made the armor more power-hungry than the Crusader armor. That, along with it being uncomfortable to wear and clumsier in the fast-paced warfare operations of the legions, meant it would never be intended to replace the previous Crusade pattern, but to act as an optional suit for specialized operations. Notwithstanding, the armor was favored by several legions due to the nature of the tactics, having entire companies suited with this mark, such as the Imperial Fist 356 Company. The Death Guard, the Iron Hounds, and the Iron Warriors were known to have great numbers of this power armor too. In time, the Mark III suit will be replaced by the more advanced Terminator pattern. Nevertheless, the Iron Armor will eventually come back in service during the Horus Heresy, due to its advantages in Astartes to Astartes combat, its replaceability, and the halt production of the Terminator Armor. Therefore, the Iron Armor plays the basis upon which the Terminator project will begin. The Terminator project shared the same goal of heavier and fully enclosed protection, however its conception was more ambitious. The Mechanicum, trusting the expansion of the Imperium's increasing manufacturing capabilities, envisioned to replace the power armor with this new heavy exo armor. The access to data of the fusion reactor maintenance suits STCs, combined with the Mark III experiences and the technologies implemented in the power armor, gave birth to the Tactical Dreadnought armor, commonly known as Terminator suit. The Tactical Dreadnought armor is designed to be the ultimate form of personal protection for an Adeptus Astartes, and the heaviest form of combat armor in an Imperial arsenal. The conceptual design of the armor shares the complex pattern of the power armor synthetic muscle fiber bundles, placed in a plastic and adamantium frame, all encased in an outer shell of heavy ceramite bonded plates. Yet at sight, the Terminator suit makes the power armor look like light infantry equipment. The Terminator armor features extra plating, with plates of heavy plasteel further reinforcing the ceramite sections, leaving no joint of fiber bundles exposed. The outer layer thickness is carefully placed in a uniform manner through the entire breastplate, especially in the frontal section, granting protection against even a direct hit of a crack missile. To support this massive weight, the armor frame contains external adamantium ribs, placed among heavily enhanced electrically motivated fiber bundles, which function as a stabilizer and strength enhancer. This allows the armor not only to be able to withstand tremendous punishment, but also to provide the strength to maintain mobility in close quarters combat, while serving as a solid heavy weapons platform in open field combat. In fact, the suit has integrated suspensors, which help the suit carry even heavier weapons, ones solely destined to bigger field units such as dreadnoughts. Despite this fact, the artificial muscle implement is not enough to prevent any loss of agility and free movement, giving the wearer a heaviness feeling. Since the beginning of the second founding, the left shoulder of every Terminator suit displays an ancient badge, known as the Crux Terminatus. The badge seems to provide more than a ceremonial function, being capable of augmenting the armor protection, turning aside blows that will threaten far more armor war engines. Although the erratic behavior of the device is attributed in a mythical way to an Emperor's armor chunk that is said to be inside the badge, it has been argued by scholars that this relic might be a bare redesign of a refractor field, though due to the lost knowledge of the device functioning and its random-driven nature performance on the battlefield, its proper classification as shield power unit is hindered. Like the power armor, though far more advanced, the massive armor is powered by a backpack power plant integrated within the armor itself, holding a heavy microfusion reactor core, which supplies energy to the suit and its mounted weapons. The internal cogitator operates in a similar way to the power armor, directly linking to the neural system of the two Astartes through the black carapace, granting them minor access to the autosensors. The Terminator autosensors also incorporate more auxiliary systems than the normal marine power armor, including motion sensors and threat detectors. The armor also contains a sensorium, based upon tendril sensors, which links in a similar fashion to the neural connection. The sensorium allows the wearer to use the inner auspices. These signature reads can be shared among different Terminator-equipped Astartes, linking each other with peak display units. This allows the Space Marines visual communication and mental location. The cogitator is also responsible for sustaining more powerful and longer-lasting life support functions, which range from basic necessities such as biomedical support to the Astartes to more advanced, like radiation filtering. This grants the armor isolation from the cold and darkest areas of space to the most scorching and irradiated environments. These enhanced survival systems are put to the test with incorporation of a teleport helmet in each suit. This technology works as a micro-warp engine, allowing the wearer to overcome the suit's lack of maneuverability. Though the process is dangerous and sometimes inaccurate, it allows a fast deep strike into the midst of enemy territory. The different patterns of Terminator armor, though highly varied in maneuverability and plating, share the aforementioned characteristics. The first Terminator pattern that faced combat was the Cataphractii pattern. In spite of the fact that there were early experimental models, such as the Unknown Saturnine project, the Cataphractii pattern was the original template for the later patterns of Terminator armor. Used by the Space Marine legions throughout the Great Crusade and Horus Heresy eras as a walking heavy weapon platform, it was set apart by its large layered pauldrons, which held shield generators, the perugies protecting the joints, and its helmet, which denoted the Great Crusade era feeling with its resemblance to the Mark III power armor helmets. The very specialized use of the Cataphractii pattern, due to its bulkiness and total lack of maneuverability, made it a rare sight before the Horus Heresy. Notwithstanding, some legions, such as the Sons of Horus and the Iron Hands, favored this suit, possessing large numbers of them. Without doubt, the most advanced variant of the Cataphractii pattern is the Aquilon Terminator Armour, uniquely designed for the Adeptus Custodes, his Praetorians. Due to the secretive nature of the Custodes, and its deployment only on rare Thorn Mortalis classified situations, not much is collected about the armor and its function. Holopics of the Legio in action show that the Aquilon pattern possesses much greater speed and maneuverability than the original pattern. It has been argued to some extent that behind this might be the genius of the Emperor himself, redesigning the power capacity of the suit and customizing neurofiber uplinks to match its weathered fighting doctrine. This granted level of superior equipment is by no means arbitrary, for the creation of these warriors is a true artisan labor, and each Adeptus Custodes is said to be a space marine what a space marine is to an imperial god. The Aquilon pattern was fielded by the Tharanatoi caste, the heavy shock troops semi-specialized of the Legio Custodes. Since the declaration of the Indomitus Crusade, detachments of the Custodes have been brought back into the fray, but their heavier troops no longer fear the Aquilon suit. This armor seems to have been replaced by a much more refined version, the Allarus pattern. Although it has not been given a proper classification, scholars categorize this armor as a Cataphractii suit, though with the disagreement of those who believe it could be an entirely different pattern. This does not seem far-fetched. Behind the gates of the Imperial Palace, the Custodians have zealously kept an ecosystem dedicated to the pursuit of knowledge, unaware of the Imperium's decline. It is implied that even the Custodes, known for being awarded many names for investigating and being men of knowledge, might have developed this magnificent device. Another possibility is the fact that the armor might be a rediscovered STC, which the Custodes solely have access to, though this seems less likely due to the similarities between the Allarus frame and the Aquilon pattern. Not much is known of the cogitators and integrated systems within the suit. The main power units have been described as magna-atomic generator shrines, which provide energy to Leonus-class actuators, allowing the Custodes to execute an exceptional range of movement with no detriment of his unparalleled speed. The main generator also provides energy to a ballistus grenade launcher mounted upon the left forearm, connected to the neural bond between user and suit. Assembled with layers of aramite and adamantium, the Allarus terminated plate is a miracle wrought formed by the most excellent craftsmanship, even capable of coming out unscathed from the blast of a macro cannon shell, a level of protection that rivals even lesser space vessels. Outfitted with the protective blessings of the Emperor, the Allarus Terminator suit is both the greatest man-portable ironclad protection in the entire Imperium and the heaviest investment of resources in a suit of personal protection. Whatever the source of its origin, the Allarus suit is a statement of 10 well-spent millennia of isolation. Another variant of the Cataphractii was forged in the Eastern 3 atrocity, the Red Butcher variant, a specialized shock assault unit, precursor of the future coordinate berserkers. Due to the heavy casualties of the 12th Legion in this campaign and the awakening tainted within the World Eaters, worsened by the implanted butcher nails, legionnaires on either side of the conflict who succumbed utterly devolved into mindless frenzied savages who could not be controlled. To counter this, what remained of these Astartes were given brutal shock implants and were confined in looted customized Cataphractii suits, fused to the armor. This allowed the creation of a superhuman killing machine without reason or restraint, controlled only through the use of brutal shock implants and the prison of the Terminator Armour, until such time that they were activated. The next step in the design of the Tactical Dreadnought armor appeared thanks to the sagacity of the Mechanicum during the later days of the Great Crusade, the Tartaros pattern. The Tartaros suit was conceived by the incorporation of the Maximus power armor improvements, sharing both the philosophy of a lighter yet multiple-purpose suit and systems. The manifestation of this concept, thanks to rediscovered technologies during the Great Crusade, provided the wearer a greater mobility than the Indomitus pattern, with no evident loss in durability or protection. These achievements made it perhaps the most advanced form of Terminator armor an Astartes had ever access to. It was the fruition of the long-fought war to put mankind out of the path of darkness, the embodiment of the era to come after the Great Crusade. The redefined design of the armor abandoned the brute resemblance to the Mark III, and shared characteristics with the Maximus pattern armor. The perugues and the right angle protection were left in favor of a more one-piece angular protection, such as the design of the armor on the back of the Tartaros legs or the vambrace and gauntlets. The frontal frame follows the pattern design of the Contemptor Dreadnought, notoriously in the torso plates. The suit, like the Imperium of the era, does not deny its past and efforts in the Great Crusade, drinking from the influences that preceded it by maintaining the iron armor heritage in the defined shape of the helmet, which grants the suit its chivalrous aspect. Due to its increased mobility, the shield generators were deemed necessary no more, while the armor will not be a bipedal heavy weapons platform like the Cataphractii was, but an impenetrable armor ready to keep up with the Legion's fast-paced warfare operations. Although its production in mass ceased long ago, it is still sometimes issued to those deemed worthy in the veteran ranks of a Space Marine chapter's elite first company. A later variant of the pattern was the Deathshroud, an artificer crafted Tartaros pattern Terminator Armour, which served in the Legion 14 to Primarch Mortarion's Mute Guard. This variant was crafted with loving care to match the legendary resilience of the Legion, usually mounting a wrist hand flamer with chem munitions and extra plating on the midsection, as well as molecular bonding studs on the shoulder pads and Quixotes. The greatest weakness of the Tartaros armor was not a flaw in its offensive capabilities, but in its manufacture process, extremely resource demanding, even for a suit of these characteristics. The Legion's supply of this pattern was seized with the breakout of the Horus Heresy. As the Horus Heresy devoured the Imperium's resources and the Schism of Mars cut down the Imperial output, these patterns became increasingly rare. To counter this drawback, a lesser demanding substitute was born, the Indomitus pattern. Originally designed during the Horus Heresy to replace the severe losses as the Heresy dragged on, it is also the pattern most commonly employed at the present by the Adeptus Astartes, due to the fact that its template is still held on Mars and many forge walls in the realm of Ultramar, such as Kono and its moon guns. The Indomitus pattern is a simple solution to the intense resource-demanding second-generation Terminator armor and the bulky and primitive first-generation design. By placing itself in the middle ground between the Cataphractii and Tartaros patterns, it sacrifices a little protection for increased mobility, though therefore it does not excel in either of the two. The suit also lacks the top autosense systems of the Tartaros, but still provides reliable advanced autosense systems when available in suits of power armor. It is the helmet's angular jaw and horse appearance which denotes the armor at first glance, as well as its less armored thighs, which seem to leave the frame of the armor at sight, giving the pattern a tough look. In the days of the Great Scouring, the Ultramarines pioneered the widespread use of the Indomitus Terminator armor, as the Legion was unable to replace the older patterns of Terminator armor after the consequent destruction and sabotage of the industrial framework of many forge walls during the war. This, alongside the implementation of the Codex Astartes, brought the armor to most chapters armored. In fact, although its manufacture is still a technological nightmare, only a few chapters, like the Iron Hounds and Salamanders, do not have a full first company equipped personnel with Indomitus armor. The reason behind the Iron Hounds chapter low fielded suits is scarcity. Although the Legion favored large numbers of older patterns and amassed them before the heresy, the subsequent betrayal in the drop site massacre of Easton V nearly wiped out the entire Legion equipment and personnel. Even today, the deployment of full Terminator squads is a rare sight. This made rationing and ingenuity a necessity for the chapter. The Iron Hands do not field Terminator squads, only their officers wear Terminator armor, a hodgepodge of older or newer patterns and machines. While the Salamanders also were nearly wiped out on Easton V, their encouragement of their elite battle brothers to manufacture their own arms and armor leaves their tech marines free to construct and maintain older and more complex war gear, which eventually shows an increase in the number and quality of their fielded equipment. Notwithstanding, there are exceptions to this scarcity. The Minotaurs and the direct ties to the High Lords of Terra granted them unusual high numbers of Terminator armor suits, being even able to field full squads of Tartaros armor. The Terminator armor can also be seen among the traitor legions and the renegade Astartes war bands. The traitor side suffered the high attrition rates of the Horus Heresy too, replacing the older Terminator suits with the Indomitus pattern. The Chaos Space Marines now field majoritarily the Indomitus pattern Terminator armor, though perhaps even in lower numbers than the Loyalists, having access to this armor only those among the Champions of Chaos, who usually have to end with its previous owner first. It is unknown if the Dark Mechanicum forges still keep manufacturing older models, or even if have access to these SDCs. Yet, it is known that they went into the Eye of Terror with at least an original template of the Indomitus pattern, being plausible that its fabrication process is still ongoing, though only for those willingly to pay the heretics for their service. A famed variant of the pre-heresy schemes of the Indomitus pattern Tactical Dreadnought armor was the Gorgon armor, fabricated by the Iron Hands Primarch Ferrus Manus and his Iron Fathers. This advanced prototype suit went into production at the outset of the Horus Heresy in the early 31st millennium to supply the Iron Hands Legion's stocks of Terminator Armour. The design replaced the standard field generators implemented on suits like the Cataphractii armor with experimental conversion fields that converted incoming electromagnetic and kinetic energy into bursts of blinding light. The suit was made with the Iron Hands repulse of the flesh spears. The heat and electrochemical toxin bleed from the armor's systems limited the armor's use, forcing to a high level of cybernetic implants and permanent insertion within the armor. Most of the suit's stock was hopelessly obliterated with its Morlocks whereas during the drop site massacre of Eastern V. The militant hand of the Ordo Malleus, Grey Knights, has at their disposal a variant of the standard Terminator armor, the Aegis Terminator armor, named after the mighty psychic chant of the Grey Knights. An outside glance of this pattern might not show many differences with the standard pattern, aside from the suit's incredible well-crafted ornamentation, the stone bolter mounted upon its vambrace, and its redefined helmet resemblance to the chivalrous shape of the Mark III iron armor. Notwithstanding, the frame contains a circuit of oaths and psychic fueling devices. His pattern is a channel temple of the psychic might of the Grey Knights, inscribed with a complex network of protective prayers and runes, which grant protection from the sorcerer's powers of the corrupted Imperium. These devices also drive the unyielding will of the wearer, communing with all the squad members through a Justicar battle brother to create a psychic chant, the Aegis, a barrier that isolates the wearer from warp manifestations. Its mere psychic resonance also confounds the perception of any enemy, resulting in an effect called Deathshrouding, which helps loosening the immaterial manifestation grip on the material realm. The production of this suit is a true artisan labor, which harnesses the knowledge of the Imperium of man of the Imperium and the psychic nature of mankind. This has never stopped resupplying the Knights' stocks of this suit, due both to the nature of the Knight's task and the long shadow of the Inquisition. This allows the Sigillites chosen to master enough Tactical Dreadnought armor to outfit almost their entire chapter, though to be fair, their numbers are below a standard Space Marine chapter. Whatever Terminator suit that a servant of the Emperor has at his disposal, its mighty protection and relic status is among the greatest acknowledgements a defender of humanity can aspire to. It must be mentioned, however, that these devices are not alone in their endeavors of rendering a Space Marine into a living tank. Throughout millennia, the ingenuity of the Tech Marines has fought artisan power armors, the so-called the Artificer Armours. Crafted generation after generation of Tech Marines in the chapter's forge, the Artificer Armour offers a degree of protection far beyond the standard power armor, even rivaling that offered by Terminator armor in some cases. However, it remains being a power armor. This limits both the suit's capabilities of energy feeding to plug in heavy weapon systems and integration of improved cogitators. Nevertheless, it supplements the Terminator armor in the armories of some of the most skilled chapters. The Imperium's renaissance ambitions of fielding his finest with this form of personal protection burned long ago in the ambitions of Horus, the arch-traitor. The subsequent destruction and downturn of the Imperium's industrial capacity condemned the ambitioned project of replacing the older suits. Terminator suits became increasingly rare, for they were exceptionally difficult to create and maintain, being usually cannibalized instead of built. In addition, the regress to slower models brought back the disadvantages of being easily outmaneuvered in the open battlefield. Only the goal of arming a selected field with the ultimate personal protection will be achieved, a Pyrrhic victory. Since those times, mankind feeds from Pyrrhic victories to not abandon itself to starvation. Such is the nature of this dark age humanity lives.